Hey, what's up everybody? In this video, I'm going to walk through how to use the second tab of this Minister's Housing Allowance Calculator tool. Now, the first tab is what most people typically will use, which will just calculate the lowest amount of either fair rental value, actual amount spent for housing, or your designated housing allowance. That's a calculation that you need to do every year for your tax return to determine the allowable amount of housing allowance. You don't just use what was on your W-2 if it was reported there. And you don't just use the actual amounts. You need to go through this each year to figure out what the actual allowable amount of housing allowance is. Now, this second tab is definitely a little more complex than the first one. Now, I've got a separate video to walk you through how to use the first one. I'll put a link to that down in the description. And I'll also try to put a link here that'll pop up where you can jump over to that video if that's the one you need. But this tab is for if your housing allowance changed during the year. Either increased, decreased, started, stopped, or you moved from one rental to another, or from renting to owning, or from selling an owned home to buying a new owned home, whatever. If you changed your housing situation, whether it was the designated housing allowance or you actually physically moved during the year, you need to use this tab. And like I said, it looks a little more intimidating. We're going to walk through it though. It's really not that bad, I promise. Just like the other one, if you try to change anything that's not supposed to be changed, it's going to warn you. It's not going to allow you to delete or change any items that should not be changed. So you're going to walk down and you're going to, you have these two periods during the year. So maybe your housing allowance changed what was designated. The church or the ministry changed what it was, or maybe you moved from one location to another. So in this example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that the housing allowance changed, but also that this was someone who was renting and then purchased a home. And so you would type in the dates here, okay, January 1 through June 30th. We're going to use something very simple like that just for the sake of calculating the example here. But the dates here are just for reference. They don't go into any calculation. But if we were there from January 1 to June 30th, that's going to be 6 months out of the year for our first period. Now let's say that our housing allowance during that time frame was designated at $2,500 per month. Let's say the fair rental value of that particular property was $3,000 per month. Okay? Now if we say I rented, then you didn't own your home. Now the fair rental value, I talked about this in the first video too, but the fair rental value is going to be, if you own a home, it's going to be the fair rental value of your home furnished. So of course your home furnished is going to rent for a little bit more than it would if it was unfurnished. Now most rental properties are unfurnished. So if you go to Zillow or Realtor.com, look up the rental value of your home, that's going to be the value for an unfurnished home. You want to add a little bit to that. I'm not a realtor. You might want to reach out to one that you know to, hey, what would be the fair rental value of my home? Or hey, how much should I add in order to this rental value if it was furnished? Okay, but in this particular situation, if you rent, the fair rental value is just what you pay in rent, of course, because you're paying the fair rental value. So fair rental value is $3,000. We're going to say for this portion of the year you rented, which means that again, rent here should be the same as what it was there because you're renting. That's the fair rental value. Maybe you have renter's insurance that you're paying a little bit per month on. And then you've got your utilities. You've got your water bill, your electric bill, your internet, and maybe you don't have any natural gas or propane. And then you have a little bit of home maintenance and supplies that you have to provide as well. And nothing here because, again, you're renting. Maybe you bought a little bit of furniture, but that's pretty much it there on that side of things. Then you're going to go to the second period. Now this is going to be July 1 through December 31, and that's 6 months out of the year. Let's say the designated amount, you bump that up, and then the fair rental value for this particular home furnished, we're going to say is $3,500 a month. And then you're going to choose I owned, because during this period you moved into a home that you had purchased. So the mortgage payment, we're going to say that was $2,800 a month. Property taxes and insurance, we're going to say if those are escrowed and they're part of your mortgage payment, you do not want to enter them in again because they were already included in the mortgage payment. If they're not escrowed, you're not paying those with the mortgage, you're definitely going to want to type those in here. And in the final version of the tool, I'll add that note right here so that you know that. Then you're going to jump down and say, okay, utilities at this particular house were $80 in water, $150 in utilities, my internet stayed, and I do have a gas bill. I have natural gas at this house. So those are my monthly amounts here. Now all of these are entered in as monthly at this point. Home maintenance, household items, supplies, yard tools, other miscellaneous. Say you put a down payment on the house because this is the year that you moved. You bought some furniture, again, furnishing that new house. And then we'll say that's all for now. So that's it. The tool is going to do everything else for you. It's going to take the fair rental value and calculate it. It's going to take the designated amounts that you typed in that were what were actually designated as part of your pay as housing allowance. And then it's going to take the actual amounts that were spent. And you get the lesser of those three amounts. So what it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, actually for both of these periods, the designated amount was the lowest amount. That's going to be what you're allowed in housing allowance. And so there's no excess allowance needed to be added back in your taxable income because what was designated is your actual allowable allowance. Now let's change a few numbers just to show how the tool would work and say that maybe the designated amount wasn't the lowest amount. So let's say designated during this period was $3,500 and your rent instead was $2,750. Now if we look, the designated amount during that period of the year was $21,000. But your actual spent and your fair, again, when you rent, these two numbers, actual spent and fair rental value, are going to be the same because you are renting, so that's the fair rental value. But that amount is going to be lesser than what was actually designated. So now what it's going to do is it's going to take that amount plus the designated amount for the second half of the year. So you are limited to the lower amount during this part of the year, and then you are limited to the lower amount during this part of the year. It's going to take those two, add them up, and say this is your allowable MHA. Your actual MHA was the two designated amounts added together, which would be $39,000. The difference between that and the allowable amount is your excess allowance. That will get added back on your tax return as taxable income. No penalty, no problem with that. You just have to do this calculation. You have to add that back. Otherwise, if you get audited, you get checked, they're going to come back and say that was taxable income. You're going to owe tax on that later when they catch you. So that's basics of the tool. Again, if you need, you didn't move during the year, it's pretty straightforward. You want to use that first tab, jump over, watch that video. I'm going to put a link to download this tool in the description of the video as well. So please feel free to download it, use it. Document your housing allowance this way, give it to your tax preparer to show them, hey, here's how I calculated what my housing allowance was, and they'll be able to use this. It'll be a very easy way for you to provide it to them. My name is Brad. I'm with Wooten CPA. My goal is to bring peace to your tax and finance responsibilities. One of the ways I do that is through these videos, and hopefully this tool will help bring a lot of peace to you during tax time as well when you're calculating these. Please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the like button on this video as well as the bell so that you're notified when new videos come out. Thank you for watching.